Sometimes I sit in this old wooden chair, on the same one my father used to sit in when the evening sun began to fall, and I stare at the horizon as if time still moves slowly, the way it used to. There are days when the wind carries memories with it, memories from a time when life was hard, yes, but it held something I miss deeply today. Respect, not the kind of respect that is demanded, but the kind that simply existed, the kind that lived in a handshake in honest eyes, in shared silence. When I was young, money was necessary, of course it was. But it wasn't what defined a man. A man was measured by his work, by how he treated his family, by whether he kept his promises, and by how he greeted his elders when passing them on the road. Today, I want to talk to you about that, about what life was like when respect carried more weight than any dollar bill. Not to say the past was perfect, but to remember what it taught us, what shaped us, what made us who we are. Stay with me for a little while, because some stories shouldn't be forgotten. And maybe, while you listen, one of your own memories might come back to visit you. I remember when I was about 15, and I used to go with my father to the town market. He didn't have much schooling, but he never needed to sign papers to close a deal. I would watch him shake another man's hand, look him straight in the eyes, and simply say, "It's settled." And it was settled. Nobody doubted it. Nobody asked for guarantees. A man's word was a commitment, something he carried inside him, like a quiet sense of pride. One time my father sold a load of corn and the buyer promised to pay him a month later. That month turned into 2, and being young, I was angry. I told my father he had been cheated, but my father looked at me calmly, the kind of calm only men with long years behind them seem to carry, and he said, "If he breaks his word, he loses something, but if I stop trusting, I lose something too." 3 weeks later, that man came back. He walked through the rain, holding the money wrapped in a handkerchief. He took off his hat and apologized. That moment stayed with me forever. Today, I see contracts filled with pages, digital signatures, hesitation in every agreement. Maybe it's necessary, like times change, but I feel like something valuable got lost along the way, and that's when I understood. Respect begins when a man honors his own word, even when nobody is watching. But let me tell you something. Respect didn't only live in business. The place where it was strongest was inside the home. In my house there were no luxuries. We had just enough, and sometimes not even that. But there was one thing that never went missing. Respect for our parents. It wasn't fear. It was something different. It was recognizing everything they did for us, even when we didn't fully understand it at the time. When my mother spoke, you listened, not because she demanded it, but because we knew every word came from experience. I remember a winter night. The kitchen was lit by a warm yellow lamp, and my father came home exhausted from working outdoors. I was upset because I wanted a new pair of shoes like another boy in town had. I spoke with a bit of rebellion, the kind that grows when you don't yet understand life. My father didn't yell. He simply sat down, slowly removed his muddy boots, and said, "Son, I wish I could give you everything you want, but the only thing I can promise is that I will never stop working for this family." I didn't ask for anything again for a long time. Today, I see families arguing more easily, patience running thin, and sometimes people forget the silent sacrifices parents make. Back then, we learned by watching. We learned by seeing our elders wake before sunrise, push forward even when their bodies ached, and share what little they had. Sometimes I think respecting our parents also meant respecting effort, respecting history, respecting where we came from. And the truth is that respect didn't stop with family. It spread across the entire town because the community felt like one big shared home. When I was young, doors were rarely locked, not because danger didn't exist, but because trust did. I remember when someone got sick. Neighbors showed up without being called. One brought food, another helped with chores, another simply sat beside them to offer company. There was a man in town, Mr. Harris. He lost his wife very young. He had 3 small children and a farm he could barely keep running. For months, neighbors brought something, a sack of flour, a few chickens, hours of labor. Nobody kept track. Nobody expected repayment. It was simply done because it was the right thing to do. I helped gather firewood for his house many afternoons, and even though I came home tired, I felt something inside, a kind of peace that's hard to explain today. Life moves faster now. Everyone has their own struggles, schedules, responsibilities. I understand that. Times change. But sometimes I miss that feeling of knowing you were never completely alone. Respect between neighbors wasn't just good manners. It was commitment to the community. And that's when I realized, when we help others, we're also protecting the world we live in, the world we leave behind for those who come after us. But there was another place where respect showed itself in a very powerful way. Work. My first real job was working outdoors. I was 17. My hands were still soft, no calluses, no experience. On my first day, I showed up 5 minutes late. I thought it wouldn't matter, but the foreman looked at me and said something I never forgot. The sun never shows up late, and the man who lives by honest work shouldn't either. He didn't scold me. He didn't humiliate me. He simply taught me a lesson. From that day forward, I learned that work doesn't just feed your body, it shapes your character. We worked in freezing cold, in blazing heat, with simple tools. But there was a quiet pride at the end of each day. You came home exhausted, yes, but with the feeling that you had done your part. I remember watching the men in town come home with dirty clothes, rough hands, and still, heads held high. Today, work has changed a great deal. There is more technology, more comfort, and that's a good thing. Progress is necessary, but sometimes I feel we've lost that deep respect for effort, that gratitude for earning a living with dignity. Money came, and money went. But the respect you earned from working honestly, that stayed with you forever. And over time, I realized something. Respect isn't only earned outside the home. It is built through small, everyday gestures, especially in love. Because yes, love was different too. I met my wife at a town dance. There were no phone, no quick messages, or no rushed promises to see her. I walked several miles every Sunday. Sometimes we could only talk for a few minutes, under the careful watch of her father. And even though it may sound strange today, that waiting made every moment special. I remember the first time I held her hand. My fingers trembled as if I were holding something sacred. Love had patience. Love had silence. Love had respect. When we got married, we had almost nothing. A small house, second-hand furniture, many worries. But we had a deep commitment. We argued, of course, like every couple does, but we never lost respect for one another, because we knew words can wound deeper than anything else, and those wounds can take a long time to heal. We raised our children teaching them that love isn't just something you say, it's something you show through sacrifice, loyalty, and staying when things become difficult. Today I see relationships that begin quickly and end quickly, and I don't judge. Every generation lives its own reality. But I believe respect is still the strongest foundation a family can have. And as the years pass, when children grow up, when the house becomes quiet, you realize the real treasure wasn't what you owned, but what you built together. And all these memories, all these stories, lead me to one final reflection I want to share with you. Life, when I look back, wasn't easy. There was hardship, exhaustion, days when it felt like we couldn't keep going. But there was something that held us steady, respect. Respect for our word, for our parents, for our neighbors, for our work, for love. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes. Sometimes we learned the hard way. But we knew that without respect, everything else loses its meaning. Today the world is different, faster, more modern, filled with opportunities, and that is good. But I believe there is still room for those values that taught us how to live with dignity. Maybe we can't return to the past, but we can carry the best parts of it with us, pass them on to our grandchildren, remember them in our conversation, practice them in small daily actions. If any part of these stories reminded you of something, I hope you take a moment to think about the people who helped shape who you are. Maybe a father, a mother, a grandparent, a neighbor, someone who left a mark on your life. If you feel like it, you can share that memory. Sometimes, telling a story is also a way of keeping someone alive in our hearts. And if you know someone who might need to hear these words, maybe a friend, a brother, or even a grandchild, share this with them. You never know when a memory can turn into a lesson. As for me, I'll stay here, sitting in this old chair, watching the horizon, grateful for the life I lived, and grateful for the chance to share it with you. Thank you for keeping me company today. Rest well, and may your sweetest memories visit you tonight.